Hello, everybody, and happy Wednesday. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday inspiration-packed program for you today. We are going to be talking about can we reverse diabetes and talking about it in the pharmacological versus the natural drugless approach. We're going to be sharing tons and tons of information about this topic. But before we start, we want to provide you with some statistics just to put things into perspective on how much diabetes can affect each and every one of us. All right. So I'm going to start. Do you want to start with the statistics? Do you want me to?
You can go ahead, and I'll just kind of getting some of my numbers here together, but perfect.
All right. So some of the statistics according to the CDC, and this is information that people can see online, they said that 34.2 million Americans, or just over 1 out of 10 people, have diabetes now in the United States. 88 million American diabetes is more prevalent among African Americans and Hispanics compared to Caucasians or Asians. And so some of the risk factors for diabetes include smoking, high cholesterol, renal disease in the United States, and also the #1 cause of blindness in adults over 18. If that's not enough, diabetes is also the 7th leading cause of death in the United States, and this is across all board, not just talking about medical causes. And some of the costs associated with diabetes in 2017, and there was $327 billion associated with costs for diabetes-related healthcare costs. What do you think about that, Dr. Linda?
Yeah, you know what? And just thanks everyone for joining us. This is such an amazing topic, because as I was I'm constantly researching, and I was just going through the CDC, the ADA, the American Diabetes Association, of course, the CDC. And as I was going through some of the stats as well, it just blew my mind, because one thing, every 10 seconds, somebody dies from a disease that is 100% preventable, which is what we're talking about, diabetes. Mm-hmm. There's some of the research that I found up to date, and I'm sure these numbers probably are higher now, but as you were talking, there's 30 million Americans that have diabetes, that actually have it, but 1 in 4 don't know that they have it. Over 80 million people are pre-diabetic. So that's 1 in 3 Americans here, American adults. And 90% of them don't know it, because it takes about 5 years to progress from pre-diabetes into diabetes. What was interesting, though, this is what blew my mind. I'm going to give you some numbers, and I think they really, when we talk about numbers per person, this will blow your mind. It costs on the average, this is according to the CDC, and these numbers are going to be higher as the years go on. It's on the average, it costs $14,000 per year to treat a person with type 2 diabetes. So let's just say, let's kind of play a numbers game here. Let's say that John gets diagnosed with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, at the age of 40. Okay. And let's say John lives all the way till he's 80 years old. So that's 40 years that he has type 2 diabetes. And if you multiply that by 14,000, what are we talking about that? I looked that up, and I'm like, okay, and that's without inflation. That's $560,000 over the lifetime for one disease in one person. That's like $500,000, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's just one person. And if you multiply that, and let's just say, let's go with really conservative numbers. There's 50 million people and the numbers are higher, but let's just say there's 50 million people that actually are diabetic, and they don't do anything about it. And that's like, we're looking at the average of 40 years, which is usually higher. We're looking at an average of, this blew my mind, $280 trillion.
Wow.
That's insane. $280 trillion. And if that doesn't scare people, I don't know what will, because even our defense, the U.S. Defense Department tells us that this is actually a threat to Americans. This is a bigger threat, because where is this money coming from? You know, and a lot of it's going to the Medicaid, Medicare. And like you were mentioning, you know, it's the leading cause of kidney disease, why people need dialysis, blindness, amputations. That I just can't believe. I just like, okay, you have a perverted taste buds, you know, you can change that. But that's insane. You know, that just blows my mind. And you're in the trenches every single day at a hospital setting. And, you know, and I'm on the phone with patients. I'm in the office with patients. And I mean, those numbers just blew my mind. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but it's just like, that's insane. And then some of the other stats.
It is insane.
And some of the other stats associated with that, they're saying that for every 10, like 4 in 10 Americans have at least one chronic disease. And actually, 4 in 10 Americans, they have, and 4 in 10 have multiple chronic disease. So when we talk about chronic disease, we're talking about diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. And all 3 of them are preventable. I just can't, it's hard for me to wrap my head around that, you know? So, I mean, those are numbers. Those are just raw numbers. And the data is, and these numbers, I think it's hard for them to keep up to date with these numbers. And these are older stats too. So.
Yes, from 2017, 2018. And not, let alone the numbers, the amount of people, I mean, the numbers don't do mercy to the amount of people that I see every single day with these problems, suffering from diabetes, the complications of diabetes, having to alter the entire lives. It's a life-altering condition once it starts. If you are really paying attention to your diabetes, that means that you can't eat many things, but not only that, but you have to self-monitor, and you have to do so many things now that before you had diabetes or pre-diabetes.
You're freezing up a little bit.
Didn't have to worry about. So
yeah, one of the studies I saw in there too was that, and these are, even now we're seeing that in kids. All right, I hope you're still there, Fernanda.
I'm back.
You're back. you kind of I
don't know what happened. My computer went down for a second. I apologize. Just going back, it's just the amount of people and how common. I mean, the numbers do not lie. It is so common. I see probably over half of my patients every single day have something related to diabetes as a complaint. So it's just so huge.
Yeah, it is. And the scary thing is as I go through the data, and you see even some of the smaller studies, some of the larger studies. I mean, from the CDC, I had picked up that 6 in 10 Americans have a chronic disease, but some of the smaller studies find that it's actually 1 in 2. You know, and that's just one chronic disease. And then people have multiple chronic disease. You know, the numbers are as small as and as diverse as 1 in 4 and 4 in 10. And as I was mentioning too, like now 30% of the kids, you know, And I just can't believe that. And like you were saying, it's people's lifestyle is altered as a result of having high blood sugar issues. I don't even like to call it a disease. It is really a symptom. You know, having high blood sugar levels is a symptom. You know, I don't even like to say disease.
I agree. It is the problem with diabetes too is that it comes hand in hand with so many other conditions. And I think people have it in their minds that diabetes is just diabetes, but diabetes is, it comes with high blood pressure. It comes with obesity. It comes with so many other conditions. And not only that, but it also leads up to many other conditions. Like we were talking about, it leads up to amputations. It leads up to impotence for men. It leads up to stroke, heart attacks, and plaque formation, and eventually loss of sensation in the lower extremities from nerve damage. So there's so many complications and so many consequences. So it's just not diabetes, it's diabetes and everything that falls under the umbrella of diabetes.
And I think one thing, as you were saying, that I thought about this, I'm like, yeah, impotence. How does that impact a person's relationship? You know, if you have a husband can't be there for his wife and satisfy his wife. I mean, it's a mutual agreement there. I mean, you're there for each other. And it's just like, how does that make a man feel? You know, what is it? Not even just his ego, but his ability to even, it probably makes him feel less than and feel less confident. So how does he show up at work? How does he show up around other people? How does he show up for his kids? Like, you know, wow, I can't even take care of my own wife. It's just like, he probably feels less than, but this is 100% his responsibility, but it impacts everybody in the family. So when people say, well, it's none of their business. It's like, yes, it is. You know, it's just like I will do my health impacts everybody. It impacts my husband, my children, my parents. You know, if I'm sick and I'm crabby, I can't be nice. You know, it's like, I'm just like a terror, want to attack everything and everybody, you know? So, so it's just not even looking at, just not what is it doing physically, but also financially. What does it do? I mean, it bankrupts some families. So, so I want to hear, I mean, and like I said, you know, as we're talking about, I mean, these are just numbers. This is, I mean, we're talking about a pandemic that's a lifestyle disease and is 100% preventable. 100% preventable. Nobody, if that's the only thing you hear, it's just like, this is like a perfect clip. 100% preventable. This is a pandemic and it is worldwide. I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about diabetes. So, you know, share it with people. Some people may not even know, well, what is diabetes? They think, oh, it's just this blood sugar thing. So, you know, you have to explain it in a real basic way. So I would love to hear how you share it with your patients in enough that maybe a 5-year-old understands.
So the way that I explain diabetes is there's 2 different ways that diabetes happen on a very, very basic level. One is either the pancreas, which is just an organ that we have in our abdomen. It's either not working to satisfy the needs of the food that you're consuming, or the tissues or your body, it's not receiving insulin as well. So that usually happens in one of those 2 ways, or both. But what that means for you is that more and more blood, more and more blood sugar starts being accumulated in the blood, inside of the bloodstream. And that is not where it goes. Because when it's in the bloodstream, it travels all over your body and it starts eventually causing damage in your arteries and in your basically in the entire body. If you have been diagnosed with diabetes and you do your prevention and you do your lifestyle change, it's irreversible. but it requires work. It requires effort. It requires commitment. It really, really requires a full commitment to be able to reverse it. If you are not, if you only rely on medications, let's say you don't want to do lifestyle, you don't want to change your diet, and you do want to take medications for diabetes, which I don't know why people would choose that, but if you do decide to go down that route, although it does control up to a certain level your numbers, it still requires diet, it still requires exercise, and it can give you a bunch of side effects, and it's very, very costly. These medications are, some of these diabetes medications are insanely expensive. You know, aside from the typical metformin ones or the more typical ones that are cheaper ones, the other medications are very, and you have to go through the insurance process. It's just such a hard, complicated, really unnecessary ordeal to go through.
Yeah, I totally agree with you in that. It's just I just, like I said, it just blows my mind when I think we're being taught a lot that the solution comes in a pill. You know, and as I think about that, we're programmed at such a young age that you watch television, and then a lot of the commercials, you know, they're pharmaceutical commercials. Hey, you have a headache, take this. Hey, you feel depressed, take this. Hey, you can't sleep, take this. Hey, you have blood sugar issues, take this. It's always take a pill, take a pill, take a pill. But the biggest pill is taking the pill of responsibility. That's the pill that you should take.
You know, it's so funny that you're talking about that, because I was listening to a video yesterday that talked about instant gratification and how millennials and, you know, younger people are are born into the era of instant gratification. You have a question, you Google it, you have the answer. You have a pain, you take a Tylenol, it goes away, right? So it's that mindset of, I want it gone and I want it now, and I want to do what's easier and faster. With diseases like diabetes, does not work, because if you're taking a medication with the hope of getting rid of the condition, it's not.
Yeah, it's simple. Yeah, for sure. And
it doesn't work that way, right? Yeah. So if you want to.
I think you're free. You're freezing. You're freezing up there.
The problem from the.
I didn't catch the last part that you said.
I don't know what's going on with this connection. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, you just kind of froze up a little bit on that as you were talking about. About the millennials. You were talking about the millennials and the instant gratification. I kind of lost you after that.
Okay. So talking about instant gratification, also many people try to apply it in medicine, right? I'm feeling depressed. I want to take a Xanax or a medication that is going to make me feel good immediately. I can't sleep. I want to take something to go to sleep. I'm overweight. I want to take something that's going to make me lose 30 pounds in 30 days or whatever, you know, and people are after the instant gratification. And what that means with something like diabetes is that because medications are not going to cure diabetes. Medications are not to cure diabetes. They are to control or act perhaps to help control some of the elevations in blood glucose and some of the symptoms, but they're not designed to cure.
Yeah, definitely. And it is a lifestyle change. It's created by lifestyle. So the solution is lifestyle. And unfortunately, we are in that day and age that we have been programmed, we have been conditioned that, hey, you want something, I want something in 24 hours, I order it from Amazon. I don't want to go and pick up my pizza. So you call and they deliver it to you. You know, it's just, we get on an app and we order something. So it's really, it's that instant gratification, and we want everything now. And even with health, you know, and I see that all the time, as we were talking off air and maybe a little bit before here, you know, people are always like, well, what herb and what vitamin can I take? And that's like, that's not the priority. You know, it's just like, what caused the problem? Let's go back and see what's the cause behind the cause. And usually, and it's with diabetics, it's 100% lifestyle.
Yes.
100% lifestyle. What a lot of people don't understand, that diabetes is actually an inflammatory condition. You know, it creates inflammation in the body. When there's inflammation in the body, guess what? There's going to be the destruction of blood vessels in the body, especially with those insulin responses. So, you know, it's going to always go back, you know, to diet. And in the circle of functional medicine, it's always about, okay, let's take a step back. Let's look at this whole picture. If it's an inflammatory condition, what's the cause? Oh, because you eat out a lot. Why are you eating out a lot? You know, you start asking those questions. Or you eat dinner late. Why do you eat dinner late? Because I come home late from work. Why do you come home late from work? You know, it's because I'm trying to make extra money. Why are you trying to make that extra money? Oh, because I want to get that new car. Really? So the new car is more important than taking care of your body? So you start to ask questions like that, and people don't like to look at that. They almost get mad because, you know, I question. It's just like, well, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And a lot of the times we're driven to just try to impress other people, and we sacrifice our health for that. And I think that really is like, it's really just calling it out as it is. Like how people talk about the pink elephant that's in the room. You know, it's like, look at what are you doing? What are you 100% responsible? So, you know, some of the simple strategies that I always start with are 100% diet. I mean, if people have not heard.
Surprisingly enough.
What's that?
I said, surprisingly enough, talking about lifestyle, you know.
You know, and lifestyle is everything from one diet. So, you know, and I know that we agree on one, okay, it's diet. Well, what about my diet? You know, it's like, I hear, well, I eat pretty healthy. I hear that 90% of the time a patients come into practice, they say, I eat pretty healthy. And I have them do like a 3-day food diary before they come in and see me. And I'm like, don't change anything. Just write out what you wrote for the 3 days. It usually looks like, oh, I ate pretty healthy. For morning, I had eggs and the English muffin. For dinner or for lunch, I had some yogurt and some granola. For dinner, I had a hamburger on a whole wheat bun. And I had a salad with ranch dressing. That's healthy to them.
Very healthy.
That's just like, that's poison to me. That's not real food. Let's look at real food and ingredients. So number one is diet. I love the Paleolithic diet. I actually have an anti-inflammatory eating plan that is a template that I use with a lot of patients. And all it is, it's pretty basic. It's vegetables, you know, it's fruit, very minimal fruit. You want to eat more vegetables, maybe a couple cups of fruit, if that, 1 to 2, the lower sugar. 3, it's clean animal products like fish, like chicken, like turkey, like bison, you know, like beef, and some, you know, some nuts and seeds, and then some of your other starchier vegetables, perhaps like sweet potatoes, you know. And then other people, some may do with rice, some may not. So it's kind of customized. But if you just look at that, and even having eggs in there, that's really almost like a Paleolithic template. And it's kind of like, what did our ancestors eat years ago? So I'd like to hear kind of like what you share with your patients.
So I usually ask them to do calorie counting, usually eating low glycemic index foods, something like eggs and oat and barley, but everything. And I usually tell my patients, things, more moderation for me at least is more important than anything. If you are, and that's actually the diet that I follow myself. I eat a little bit of everything, but I'm very moderate in the way that I eat the things that are not necessarily healthy for me. So in my opinion, and many patients, I think, react better to, okay, you can be a little bit less strict with certain things. If you can have a little bit more of these, maybe you can stick to the diet a little bit more. So giving them a little bit of freeway usually works for a lot of the patients that I see. Not doing such a strict diet in many cases. Some patients do prefer, I guess, a strict diet that they can adhere to, and they can do their calorie counting, and they can stick to everything that's on the list. But for the majority of my patients, usually, moderation with everything you do. But if you can stick to a low glycemic type food, do the calorie counting you want to eat, basically avoiding carbohydrates. So anything that is a carbohydrate, rice, bread, and cereals and tortillas, and anything that it's, with carbs, basically anything carb, you want to keep it to a minimum. And if you do want to eat a carb, usually whole wheat, it's a better option. So there, we can go into detailed categories, and that's usually what I do when I'm seeing my patients. And then I also, on top of every piece of information that I give them, I send them to a diabetic nutritionist, so they can go in depth into how to do the calorie counting and everything else, basically.
So
but on top of the diet, go ahead.
No, I would say, so basically, this is what I have seen, just dealing with so many patients, that the food, even like the wheat today, is a higher glycemic. And what we're finding, that something that's totally overlooked by a lot of people that manage diabetic patients, is a lot of people that are diabetic are craving sugar all the time. Okay. A lot of them actually have a candida, or they have yeast. And so they have gut infections, they have gut pathogens. So even if they ate just a little bit, because I've seen this in the practice, they're like, oh, every time I have even just a little bit of toast, whole wheat toast, whole grain, I feel a little bit drunk. I feel different. And it's because it's like, well, you're feeding that, that candida in your body, and you have that fermentation, and it's like it's like you're having alcohol. So sometimes even people that's kind of why I find it a little bit more difficult to even let patients have like certain foods, because they're still, I kind of look at it in the perspective is, I'm trying to get them off cocaine 100%. Not, you can have only a little bit of cocaine on the weekends, let's find something that's a different alternative. So I think that's been one of the challenges, where kind of just what I've seen in the practice, because I do have a lot of people that come from other doctors, and a lot of it really, and it just goes also to the mindset. And I know the way you practice, and you're limited with your time, what you can tell a patient, whereas with concierge medicine, it's more like they have longer time with me, because I'm not working in the insurance parameters and their protocols, where it's like, okay, you got 10 minutes and we're going to reimburse you for 10 minutes. So I don't work in that parameter. So it's easier for me to kind of get into that mindset of, it's kind of like, would you be okay with, oh, my husband only cheats on me on the weekends, I'm still going to stay with him. So when we change it to that perspective, it's like, hell no. It's just like, I try to get them to see it in that perspective, instead of, oh, can I have a little bit of this? Can I have a little bit of that? Because if they continue with that same mindset of, oh, I want a little bit of this, I want a little bit of that, they're always going to stay there in all areas of their life. So that's where that complete mind shift has to be dialed in, that, oh, when people say that, because you'll go to parties, oh, just have a little bit of this, have a little bit of that. Just, I made this for you. Just try a little bit. I'm going to confess, because I might have told you this last time, but I went and I ate a donut. I was sick and in pain for 4 days. My
Oh my
body
gosh.
was aching. I had a headache. I felt like I got beat up for 4 days. For 4 days in a row, I have been icing my neck and my shoulder. I try to get in to see a massage therapist, and I'm like, that's only a temporary solution because I know what caused it. I know it was what I ate. And I take full responsibility. And it's like, that was crap that you ate. So yeah, you deserve to be in pain. So maybe you won't do it again, you know? And it just felt so horrible. So this morning was one of the first mornings I actually woke up. I still put ice on my shoulder and my neck. It's like 90% better. But I knew that it was what I ate. I knew that it was that. So I know that at times when and just because, you know, in that insurance model, that's, I think, the hardest part for you is that you're in that limited time of what you can tell the patient. And I know you probably want to tell them, get behind the root cause of,
Oh my gosh.
you know, and they have these emotional connections with maybe even bread. I ate bread as a little girl because that's how grandma showed love to me. So if you take that away from them, it's just like you're taking love away from me. So there's like this whole connection.
It's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Even for Hispanics, you know, taking away a lot of the diet for diabetics is not very conducive.
Yeah. It's almost like an uphill battle that you're, you know, that we're fighting.
For Hispanics, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. And it's the quality of food. But like, let's go back to like, you go to some of the Latin American countries and
It's kind of like in a way, taking their culture away.
And one of the things,
I'm sorry?
one of the things too is like what's changed even now is our food quality. So you can have a person eating tortillas, you know, a Latin, because diabetes and Latinos is much higher. You can take them and they can have food, they can have tortillas in their country, and then they move here to the United States where most of the corn is GMO. And they're like, I'm eating the same thing. I'm not changing anything, but maybe at home they were walking everywhere. Maybe at home they were riding their bike everywhere. Maybe at home they were on mass transit, or on public transportation. And then they come to the States and it's just like, oh, the food is not the same. Their activity is not the same. So they end up gaining weight and they say, gosh, why did I gain weight? So we have to even look at that perspective too. Don't you agree?
I think it's one of the things that happens to most of the people when we come to the States. You know, it happened to me, and I know so many people that have migrated to the United States, and it's kind of like a joke that, you know, people have. Oh, once you get to the United States, you start gaining weight unless you really focus and control what you're eating and the amount of exercise. And yes, it may be a huge thing. It's the quality of food. Absolutely. Eating processed foods all the time. And, you know, the fast food quality here and all these things. But it's also the lack of we do way more exercise. There's so many more things to do. And in this country, usually we're too busy, or we say we're too busy in order to not take perhaps accountability for where we are.
Yeah.
I think.
Absolutely. A lot of it is accountability. So these are like, this is something simple that even if a person says, well, I don't have time to go get, you know, tested or anything. I wrote a blog post a few days ago about if there's 3 things you can have in your home. One would be a glucometer. You know, it's being able to check your blood sugar levels in the morning. And I always tell our patients that I want to see it under 100. You know, check your blood glucose level. And I mean, basically, this is what it looks like. You can go pick one up at CVS, at Walmart, any drugstore. And I'm sure all your patients that have that, they can, you know, check it in the morning, a fasting, their fasting blood glucose levels. You want to check that in the morning. And I tell them, check it for 3 days in the morning, 3 days in a row in the morning, so you can see what it is. Check it 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours after you eat. If it's going higher than 140 when you check this, an hour after you eat, you know that you're eating food that's spiking your blood sugar levels. So that's probably not a food you should be eating. So after 3 hours, it should be back at the baseline. And what I see for people that are really healthy and have control of their blood sugar issues, they're actually under 90. That's kind of where I see them. And this is something that they can buy. It doesn't cost them a lot. It's not going to take time it's not taking time out of your schedule. If you just bought this could save you thousands and thousands of dollars, So monitoring that, checking your blood pressure. I tell people, check your blood pressure, know what it is. Usually blood pressure, you're going to see that it's something lifestyle. And it's a lot of times it's related to food. So, I kind of like to hear if that's something that you have your patients check, and that way they can monitor their glucose levels at home, because most of them don't even check their blood sugar levels. And maybe they go to the doctors once 3 years and get their blood workup done. I mean, I run everything from C-peptide to insulin to hemoglobin A1C and glucose. So that's, those are just a couple of things.
So for my patients, I usually monitor their blood work every 3 months, or if I'm doing any changes in my recommendations, I may do sooner blood work. But aside from the medications, there's so many other things that are recommended, on a visit, on a first time visit, aside from just dietary changes. One thing is checking the eyes every year, making sure that the eyes are checked every single year, checking the feet, make sure that there is no sores on the bottom, on the soles of the foot. Again, can you hear me?
Yeah, you keep freezing up a lot. It's kind of a little bit hard to.
I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so kind of a simple strategies in a 1, 2, 3 a punch. Like I said, I think the first thing that a person is, 1, take responsibility. 2, buy a glucometer. Check your blood sugar levels. Monitor that. You don't have to. Of course, I encourage you to go get your blood workup done. Change your diet. Definitely, as we talked, a paleo template, anti-inflammatory eating plan template is a wonderful place to start. There's something when I worked for a nutrition company, I was one of their speakers, something that's been around, and they had an obesity clinic in Canada, and this was all they did with their patients, and they had them on a continuous glucose monitor, and they saw such changes with them is they added something called PGX, natural factors PGX, and it's just a fiber, and it basically, they would mix it in water, they would drink it like 30 minutes before their meal. It just like would expand in their stomach, so they would feel sensation of fullness, so they would actually eat less, and they would actually notice that their blood sugar levels were more controlled with that. So that's something that you can just go buy at a health food store. But from sleep, because if you're not sleeping, when you sleep less, what's called your leptin hormone and ghrelin hormones change. Leptin hormone tells you, hey, I'm full. If you're not sleeping enough, that hormone goes down. So, and then the other one tells the other one, ghrelin, says, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. That goes up. So sleep has a lot to do with that. And of course, exercise, getting out. Sitting is a new smoking. We're sitting too much. And so making sure, I always have the goal of 10,000 steps of sitting, making sure that your exercise, set your timer. If you work from home, you work at an office, set your timer every 15 minutes, get up, walk, move around for like 5 minutes. And the gut health. So even like the PGX, I have patients sometimes even take the berberine. That's worked great. Fish oils, alpha lipoic acid. Those are some of the other things. One of the interesting studies, though, as I talked about, even why I love working on the gut is because I see so many pathogens in the gut, and it makes it even harder for a person that's trying so hard to clean up their diet. And they're like, when you're trying to get this candida, this candida in the body, it's just like you crave sugar even more. So it makes it even harder. So just even improving gut health. So even one of the studies show that if they don't have enough hydrochloric acid, they found that in the diabetics. So even just giving them hydrochloric acid with a meal to help with digestion. So those are the simple things. And of course, fish oils. I like to do like high doses of fish oil, but you want to make sure that you're being monitored by someone, because if you're on a blood thinner, you really have to watch that. And as you start making these changes, you should be monitoring your glucose levels at home with this, because once you start improving your health, and if you're taking medication, what you're going to find is, I've seen this in my practice, patients they start getting tired because they're on medication, and then naturally they're dropping their blood sugar levels because they're cleaning up their diet and it's too low. So I'm like, that's why you need to be checking it and talk to your doctor and say, hey, maybe it's time for me to readjust my meds. With, of course, hopefully the goal would be to get them off. And is that kind of your plan of action with patients, is to try to get them off so that there isn't, from the blindness, the amputation, kidney disease being the number one reason why you have people go for dialysis.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very honest in the way that I talk to my patients about all the complications. I try to be very honest about all these complications. And what I find is, if people know what could happen, they see their future if they're not taking care of themselves. So always the education is a big part on all these things that they can do: diet, exercise, and all these different things that we can do, and recommendations, sleeping, and maybe taking, dietary recommendations with magnesium and chromium and apple cider vinegar, cinnamon, all these things that can help. And I go into depth, in depth about all these recommendations. But my goal always is to get people out of medication. Mm-hmm. And I also do, if they're borderline, I don't start them on medications. I do all the lifestyle first. Do these, change that. We can improve here, we can improve there. I do not rely on medications as a first line, nor I rely on medications forever once patients start taking medications. And people come to me and say, hey, do you think that I can get over taking medications? Can I stop taking medications if I really do, exercise, and if I really apply myself in diet? And the answer is 100% yes. Mm-hmm. I've seen it many times. I've seen patients on insulin, getting off of insulin, getting off of medications, and just doing the dietary and doing the lifestyle modifications, And they can make lifestyle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. Do you see many patients getting off of medications once they start?
100%. I have a lot of patients that, working with blood sugar, working with heart disease, I kind of I look at it as a whole body approach. I said, I'm not treating any conditions. I always tell patients, I don't treat conditions. I'm here to treat your body, treat you as a whole, not as, oh, we're just looking at the heart. Oh, we're just looking at the brain. Everything, it's a multifactorial approach where you've got to get the mindset right, and you've got to get the diet part right. What fuel are you putting in your body, in your movement? How much are you moving? Those are the things that I look at. In stress management is huge, 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 huge. And so, like we talked about last time about the S's and, the stress management and the sleep, those are huge, and the mindfulness. So this is something that people can do. It really is. Can they do it by themselves? Maybe they can't do it by themselves. I mean, that's why you and I are in practice. I tell people I'm here as your biggest cheerleader. It's about being a team. And many times, I reach out to some of these other doctors and they're all too busy. Like probably less than 5% will call me back because I tell them and I share and I show the protocol. What am I doing with the patient? This is what I'm recommending. What are they eating? What products are they taking? What did I find on all these other tests? What did I find in their hormones? What did I find in their gut? What did I find with heavy metals? What did I find? So I give them the information, but a lot of them they're not knowledgeable in that. That's just not what they're taught, and when you go to conferences and you continue to get your CMEs, continue medical education units, who's there? Big Pharma's there. So it's not something that's natural. And I think that's the biggest frustration is because, we're supposed to be a team. I would love to have you here, right here in my city here in my town, because it's just like, we would be relentless. But the beauty of what I'm seeing now is functional medicine, telemedicine is now, maybe this is a good thing of COVID, is that, no, it's not ideal to treat patients. I heard a doctor earlier that was saying, I went to school to have hands-on patients. Well, yeah, me too. Initially a chiropractor, hands-on is really important. But also, you don't want the person dependent on you. You have to put full responsibility back on the patient and say, hey, go get a glucose monitor. Hey, go buy a blood pressure monitor. It doesn't cost that much. Okay, so this month you're not going to get your hair done. You're not going to get your nails done. You're not going to get your extensions done. Instead of spending money on that, go and buy these 3 things that you can have at home.
Absolutely. And one more thing that I share my patients is whether you do the work or you don't do the work, it's your life. Ultimately, you're the one that's going to pay for whatever decisions you're making right now. So in 10 years, if you're the patient that is coming to me with an amputation, or now having to be on dialysis, or now having vision problems and being blind, or having a heart attack or a stroke or whatever complication related to diabetes, just know from the get-go that all the responsibility, everything that it's related to developing a complication from diabetes lies in your hands, nobody else's.
Exactly.
And there is so much information. There is so many resources. There is this podcast, so much information now. Like we were talking about instant gratification at a click, just by pressing a click, we can find so much information about diabetes and how we can battle against it.
Yeah, for sure. So just kind of to summarize, so I'm going to run these numbers by one more time, just so that it really hits home as we sandwich this in and wrap it up. For every person, the average is $14,000 a year to treat diabetes and diabetes complications. That's for one person. And the average person that maybe is diagnosed at the age of 40, and they live to, let's just say, 80, you multiply that 40 times 14,000, you're looking at over $500,000 for just one person, one disease. Person. You multiply that by 50 million, we're talking about 280 trillion. So that's why the Department of Defense is saying Americans, obesity, diabetes is becoming a threat to our existence. And I 100% agree. So you have information out there. I tell people, go on my website. If you just go on my blog post and just put in their diabetes, you have a sample 5-day eating plan. It's a Paleolithic one. Just put it in there. I do have an ebook that we just haven't uploaded that it's just kind of what we talked about. It's just the basics. But bottom line is, just love on yourself, take full responsibility, because no one else is going to be responsible for your happiness and for your health. That is a 100% inside job.
Mm-hmm. That is 100% everybody's inner responsibility. Definitely.
Yeah. So,
all right.
Great.
So thank you so much for whoever's listening to the podcast. This information can save lives. Please, please, please just take full responsibility of your health and know that it lies with you. All right. Thank you. And we'll see you guys next week.
Next time. Bye.